Oscar Wilde once said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." Which is one of those quotes we see people stick on their fridges or quote on their Instagram posts because the human race just loves this quote. Thank you, Mr. Wilde. Because we love to be given permission to be ourselves. What is more liberating than that one particular open door? Now, all of a sudden, we have this quote that tells us we can be our loud, goofy selves in public because all the quiet people are already taken. Or that we can dress as colorfully and eye-catchingly as we want because all the black and white and neutral colors are also already taken. Deep inside all of us, there is an authentic version that worries about how it will be perceived if it is ever given the time of day. What will people think? How will my light be dimmed? How will my personality be restricted and maybe even overshadowed? But you know what we don't consider anywhere near as often? The fact that this quote applies to everyone around us, just as much as it applies to us. So why is it so hard to let people simply be who they are? Why are we so much quicker to judge other people's different behavior than to pause and remember to simply let them be? I think it's safe to say and safe to assume that we've all been hurt by this in the past. So grab yourself a nice hot drink, get cozy, and let's begin today's conversation. Hello, my darling friends. My friends, how are you? Welcome back or welcome here for the very first time to another episode of the Being Aloud podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bibi Shea, the one person who's daring enough and crazy enough to actually have conversations that this society sometimes does not let us have, such as conversations about just the reality of how hard it is to be human. Like, let's just face it, it's freaking hard to be a person. It's freaking hard to navigate the difficulties of loss and disappointment and the growth pains of being a person. Like, as you grow, you experience growth pains and stuff, and no one talks about that, you know, because we live in the day and age of social media where it is just so much more glamorous to like portray our lives as the most perfect things in the entire universe, like, you know, and then we never get to know the struggles of what makes us human and what makes us who we are. And so subconsciously we start believing that, oh my goodness, this person that I really admire, their life is perfect and put together. Wow. And then we go through difficulties and then we're like, oh my God, we feel so alone in our difficulties because clearly no one else has difficulties and everyone else goes about life so nicely and glamorously. And I'm just over it. Like, I'm so over it to the point where like I can't even like I can't be a person who like buys into this social media day and age anymore. I can't do it. Like, I can't, because just over these past few years, I've experienced the difficulties of being a person. And currently, as I'm filming this and recording it, I'm also struggling with the reality of being a person because it's freaking hard. Because one minute you feel like, okay, your life is finally starting to get itself back together and you're finally starting to like identify markers of your life, you know, your life is starting to feel a little more familiar. And then boom, just kidding, we're back to square one, where you actually have no idea what's going on in your life, but you have to pretend like you do until you actually do. And then you're reminded that, oh my goodness, being a person is so extremely hard because I have all these plans and dreams and ambitions and goals, but life won't let me see them through. So what do I do? You know? Yeah, I'm kind of in this season right now. So today's episode is about, it's just going to be one long rant pretty much because I'm like feeling it in my core, I'm feeling it. And because life is already hard enough as it is, without us also adding the pressure on one another of like having to fit a certain mold in order to fit in, and having to look a certain way and behave a certain way and speak a certain way and blah 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 in order to fit in. Like guys, guys, like life is hard enough, you know? So let's just at least remove that one very unnecessary burden from each other's shoulders so that we can now navigate the difficulty of life more freely and from a place of authenticity. So I want to tell you about the reason why that I decided to have today's episode be about this topic of like living and let live, and also of finding the freedom to be the full expression of ourselves out loud, which is literally the essence of this podcast. We want to be ourselves out loud. We want to live through our experiences out loud, like out loud, because there's only one you, whoever you are, who is listening or watching. There's only one of you. And you are here for such a limited period of time. Like, honestly, I am being slapped on my face like every single freaking day with this reality of like, we're here for a very limited period of time, guys. Like, we like to think that we're immortal, like we're gonna live forever, like, you know, this day doesn't matter, this hour doesn't matter, it's okay, you know, blah blah blah, because doesn't no, we are here for a very limited amount of time. And the truth is, we just can't afford to live our lives under the shadows and without letting ourselves and giving ourselves the permission to actually be who we freaking are. Okay, there's no time. And also, that's such a waste of time to spend all that energy trying to suppress the reality of your character, your personality, your uniqueness in order to fit this mold for people who actually don't really care. Like, they don't actually care as much as we think they do. So it's such a waste of time. But I want to address this topic today so that we can, in the future, get it out of the way and then make time to talk about the things that actually do matter, you know? And actually do make us who we are. All right. So here's the trigger. Here's why I decided to have today's episode. So I follow this woman on Instagram and YouTube. And I will say she is one of my top 5 favorite people that I follow. Top 5 creators for so many reasons. I found her because towards like the end of 2021, I developed this newfound love for watercolor painting. And even though I suck, I was like, this is a hobby that I can do just for me, that I can, like, this is time to slow down, listen to like very chill music and create art. And sometimes I create fart. Like, sometimes it's just not good at all. But I love it. And I'm loving the journey of like learning and being a beginner and all that stuff. And so I looked at people I could follow to teach me how to watercolor. And lo and behold, this woman, her name is Jenna Rainey, appears. And my oh my, she's not just like a painter. She's not just an incredible teacher, which, by the way, I get lots of questions of like where I learned to watercolor. At Jenna Rainey, guys, at Jenna Rainey. She's incredible, incredible, incredible. I'll actually link her in the show notes below or in the description below on YouTube. So anyway, so she taught me a lot, and I like enrolled in her courses, and I have been taking this Jenna Rainey very seriously, but not just for the watercolor aspect, but also because of her personality, her character. She's so quirky. She reminds me of myself. Like, she's so fun. She's so unapologetic about who she is. Like, she's just inspiring to me on more than one level, more than just the watercolor level. And so I follow her on Instagram as well. So here's what happened, okay? Most of the people who follow her are people who also found her because of her watercolor, and because that's what she does. You know, she teaches watercolor. So most people followed her for that reason, kind of like me. But this past month, or sorry, I think in January, sometime in the last few months, she did this shoot, this new like photo shoot, very professional, and the pictures were amazing, very expressive, very like raw and loud photos that I was just so inspired to look at. You know what I mean? And one of those photos, and then she did the reel, right? In that reel, she posted all the photos from the shoot, and there was like a 1 second or 5 seconds, something like that, slot. It wasn't even 5 seconds. Slot for this photo of her in like briefs, in underwear. So she's fully clothed on top, but she's wearing very, very conservative like briefs, which all the time we see people on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere in their bikinis on the beach, you know, all that stuff. And I mean, honestly, this was genuinely not a provocative photo at all. Like I literally saw it and like made nothing of it and was just admiring the rest of the photo shoot, the whole photo shoot, all that stuff. Okay. But then the internet exploded, and I followed this so closely on her Instagram. She called it the underwear gate because people attacked her so harshly. Oh my goodness. Like I was like, wow, why do you people even care that much? You know what I mean? Like one of two things. You either follow her for her art, which she has not stopped posting about, and her tutorials have not stopped, and her YouTube teaching, her classes have not stopped. So in that case, you can just, and if that picture offends you so much, just turn a blind eye and keep following her for the reason why you came to follow her. You know what I mean? Or be like, okay, this actually changes my perspective so much on this person, and I actually don't think I want to follow her anymore, in which case also unfollow her, which she has said, like, please feel free to hit the unfollow button, no problem. You know what people did? They stayed, and they made the biggest deal out of it, and they were so harsh and mean and unkind and unloving and just and you know what the thing is? The thing is, like, even though this is a very unique story to Jenna Rainey, this whole, like, this particular photo that she posted, whatever, we can all have our thoughts on it. But that's essentially exactly what happens in all of our lives as well. Like, even if we've never posted a provocative picture and had people, you know, troll us on the internet, we have had people try to have much bigger opinions about things in our personal lives that they're not invited necessarily to have these opinions about, you know? And so like this kind of triggered so much in me because it hit home in so many ways. And here's why. Because growing up my entire life, I was told that I needed to fit this particular mold of a person, right? I grew up in a Christian household, and was taught that this is what it looks like to be a Christian. You have to look exactly like this. And I would go to church, and I genuinely very strongly remember this, okay? I would go to church, and every human being around me looked the exact same way, behaved the exact same way, spoke the exact same way, judged the exact same way. Like, I remember that I always had this like mixed identity crisis. Like I had an identity crisis growing up. And I would say it only started getting a little bit better ever since I turned 30. So literally just these past couple of years, literally I just turned 32. It's just these last couple of years that I was able to finally feel like I'm actually fitting in my own skin and actually arriving at who I really am. Because yeah, my whole life I was told, if you want to be a Christian, this is what you need to look like. This is how you need to dress. This is the language you need to have. Not only that, but this is the you know, timeline that your life needs to follow. You need to go to school, do really, really well. Also engage in all these kinds of like extracurricular activities if you want to be a good person, you know, if you want to be a successful, great person. You go to church every week. You go to school, you excel at school, you participate in all these extracurricular activities. You don't have to want to engage in these extracurricular activities, but alas, you will participate in them, whether you like it or not. And then you will graduate high school, you'll go into college, you'll do something great, you know, you will like become an engineer or a businesswoman, or, you know, if you want to be like extra special, you'll become a doctor. But these are basically your fields that you're allowed to even look at, you know, architecture, business, mass communication, you know, these things that are common to everybody. And then you will graduate from that. You'll either get your master's or not. And then you'll find the love of your life, or the love of your life will already be in your life. You'll get engaged, you'll get married, you'll have kids. And then being that you're a woman, most likely, let's face it, let's be real, you're probably going to quit your job and stay home with the kids. And that's the mold, okay? And then along the way, as you follow this timeline, you're also going to be this very quiet, very likable person who never raises her voice higher than this, who doesn't speak quickly but speaks very slowly, and in this very meek, like this was the definition of meek that I was given. You have to be this kind of woman. Also, even if for nothing else, just so that guys could like you and be drawn to you and be attracted to you, you have to be this kind of person. Well, I tried, okay? I tried so hard to be this person. I like would speak in a certain way that like would make me sound like a church girl and like blah, 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 blah. And like that would make me fit in to this community that my parents told me I needed to fit into. And so that was like the highest thing I could achieve my whole life. I need to fit in with this particular group of people. And then real life happened, you guys. And when real life happened, I realized, okay, I'm being told I need to be this person. I need to fit this mold. This mold sounds nothing like me, looks nothing like me. And so I'm experiencing this constant anxiety in my chest. Like when I say I was experiencing a constant anxiety in my chest, I mean constant. I mean, I don't remember a time when I felt like, oh, like I would look back at pictures and be like, oh, this was when I was really myself, you know? Oh, I remember this trip that we took. I remember I was so myself in every single picture of every single camp, trip, birthday I was at. Any time I was around people, there isn't a single authentic picture of who I actually am. And every time accidentally a part of who I actually was slipped out, I was told, Booba, you're too loud. You're too ambitious. You're doing too many things. You're too much, basically. And I think I even did a podcast episode maybe a year ago or something that's like too much, you know. I think it was called Take Up Space, because I was told I was too much my whole entire life. I was told I'm too much. And then when people told me I was too much, I was like, yeah, I have to remember. I am too much. I'm now being too much. I need to like fit into this particular mold. Well, guess what? I'm a very loud person by nature. I speak really quickly. I also have opinions about lots of things. I'm also interested in lots of different things. And so, sure, I can excel at school. Oh, guess what I studied at school, which made people flip and lose their minds as well. I studied literature, English and comparative literature, and I minored in creative writing. And I live in Egypt. Everyone was like, what are you going to do with English and comparative literature? I'm like, Mom, I'm going to expand my brain. I'm going to learn about the human race. I'm going to get in touch with my humanity and the humanity that's existed for centuries, which people have written about, because that's meaningful work to me. That's what I want to study at school. And everyone was like, this girl. I distinctly remember this conversation that I had with people. I'm not going to name who they are, but we were at like a birthday, and these two girls took me aside and they're like, you're getting your master's in English and comparative literature? By the way, I love these girls now. Like, we're really good friends. But like back then, they grilled me so much about how I'm throwing my life away and doing something that's completely useless and like pointless and so weird because no one else studies English and comparative literature, that I went into a room inside the house and I started weeping, and I called my sister, who was studying in San Diego at the time. And I was like, I feel like I'm wasting my life. I feel like, what am I doing? And stuff like that, because these girls were like unable to imagine that I can be following a path that's not identical to everybody else's. You guys, we do that to each other. We want to be told, be yourself because everyone else is already taken. We want to hear that, right? And then we hear it for ourselves and we love it. We love it. And we're like, yeah, I want to be able to be myself completely. Okay. But then am I allowing other people to be themselves too? Or is it just for me? Or am I just allowed to be me, myself? Why can't we just live and let live? Like with Jenna Rainey on Instagram. Okay, you don't have to agree with what she did. Perfectly fine. You are not her. So that there's no pressure on you to do the exact same thing on your Instagram, you know? But why can't you just let her be, even if you disagree with her? I feel like we have room, we have permission to give remarks and to give constructive criticism and to advise those who are very close to us, who are in our very close circle of friends, or like our partners or our parents or siblings or people who we do constant close proximity life with. We can be like, hey, I would advise you to not post this picture on Instagram, you know? But that's just me. At the end of the day, do your thing, but I just want to advise you, right? But we're not allowed to comment on other people's choices who we're not close to, and just out of criticism, as though everyone around us owes us an explanation as to why they do what they do. I remember when I first started this YouTube channel, and then when I first started the podcast, literally whenever I started anything that was like cringeworthy, you know, something I had not done earlier, because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to cringe that people are watching my channel or listening to a podcast, you know? I remember feeling terrified. What are people going to say? Or what are people going to say? Like, are they going to say, who the heck does she think she is? Creating a podcast or creating a YouTube channel, putting herself on camera, blah, blah, blah. Like, what are people going to say? Because we live with this constant awareness that other people are going to have opinions on the way that we choose to live our lives. You know what? I don't owe everyone an explanation as to why I do what I do. Unless you are walking life with me very closely so that you understand me and you know my values and my principles, then you can come and be like, Buba, I wouldn't advise you to maybe release that particular podcast episode or YouTube video. We would advise against it because we care for you. We love you. And because we know that knowing you, maybe one day you'll regret it. But unless you're walking so closely to my life, I don't owe you an explanation as to why I am the way that I am, why I am loud, why I'm opinionated, why I am like super animated as a person. I don't owe that to you. Jenna Rainey does not owe it to any person why she decided to post a picture of herself in very, very conservative briefs on Instagram. It's none of my business. It's also none of your business, none of anyone's business. And yet somehow we still feel like she owed it to us. People feel like I owe it to them to explain why I do what I do, why my friends are who they are, why I, blah, blah, blah. Enough shaming one another from this place of entitlement to other people's stories. We're all very unique individuals. We are all created literally, uniquely, individually. There never was and never will be another Buba, and there never was and never will be another you. Ever, ever. Sure, we share similarities, but there's never going to be someone who is exactly like you. And it's a waste of time to try to spend time justifying our characters, justifying our actions, our behaviors, especially if they're not like harming anyone. If they're just an expression of who I am and how I want to live my life, then I will be wasting my time trying to pause and explain my choices and my decisions to the people around me. That's just a waste of time. So yeah, there's another quote that I posted on Instagram actually a couple days ago that I want to leave us all with, because this is something that I am learning, okay? And I feel like this is like the area where I fall in this trap of judgment, or not judgment, but like conclusion arriving, unjustified conclusion arriving, is with my closest people, the closest people to me. I tend to feel like, oh, I know you already, and therefore I can assume how you're thinking or whatever. But I know that lots of us also do this with people we know, people we don't know, people online, people in our real lives, all that stuff. And so I posted this quote on Instagram a couple of days ago because this is where I'm learning to grow, and this is what I'm learning to kind of like let go of, or like become a better person. Okay, so I'll read it to you. It is: let's normalize asking questions for clarity instead of moving based on the story you've created in your mind, which may or may not be true. Clarity preserves relationships. And it was a quote by The Good Quote. I don't know if you know that page. But yeah, let's start asking more questions. If someone does something that really, really bothers you, whether that person's in your life or online or whatever, let's try to learn together to ask more questions of like, I noticed that you did this. Can you explain what your motive was? Because I don't want to like arrive at a conclusion. To me, I took it this way, but I know that this might not necessarily be the way you intended it. So what way did you intend this to be? Let's ask more questions out of curiosity and with kindness, so that we can try to understand instead of shame, so that we can try to learn and draw closer to one another instead of condemn. If you are in any religious community, this is to you, because I feel like more often, unfortunately than not, the religious communities tend to have this language of shame much more than any other community. And we speak in a way that induces shame from the pedestals of like church or mosques or whatever. And for the longest time, I questioned whether or not I could be a Christian despite looking different, despite acting different, despite speaking different. Like, I was always made so hyper aware of how different I was to the people I was supposed to belong to. And that raised so many questions, and it made me doubt so many things. And then I realized I'm a Christian because of my faith. I'm a Christian because of my personal individual walk with God, and why I believe what I believe, and the time that I spend with God. And all that shame that I was led to believe in, that I was fed, literally, it was fed down my throat, this shame of doing or being anything outside of the box that's very narrow and more like a straitjacket than anything else. No, I was made as who I am. I was made this way. Like, I was literally created as a loud, colorful, opinionated person. And that doesn't make me any less worthy of love or relationships or conversations than the person who's like super quiet and super reserved. And think about what way that applies to you, and understand that you are who you are. You deserve to be where you are. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be admired for the character that you are. And then the close people in your life will rebuke you when they feel like you're doing something wrong. They will point you lovingly in the right direction whenever they feel like maybe you're acting from a place that's not even in line with your own beliefs and values and convictions. But you don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to look like anyone else. You don't have to speak like anyone else. And so this is a rant for today's episode, but it's also me challenging myself to apply the same, level and value and measure on the people around me as well. My dearest friend, you are so unique. If only you knew how unique and amazing you are. Like, truly, can we take a moment to realize that no two people were made the same? Even identical twins. are so unique, and we're made the way that they were made for a reason. So how about we start asking more questions out of love and out of curiosity? How about we be like, okay, maybe this person is this way. We're not called to be BFFs with every human being, but we can admire and respect that we are each our own way, and that we were all created this very unique way, and then choose who we want to be friends with, whose uniqueness fits with our uniqueness. We don't all have to be friends, but we all do have to be kind, and we all do have to be loving. And we need to stop this language of shame. And we need to stop suppressing people's characters and personalities just out of, it's easier for us to all fit in the same mold. Let's just stop that and start being who we actually are. Thank you so much for watching this video or for listening to this podcast episode. As always, it is a pleasure to be here. I love having these conversations with you guys, and I also love hearing back from you. So please, if you're on YouTube, comment below, let me know what your thoughts are. And if you are on the podcast itself, please leave a review and like and share, and please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because I work really, really hard, and I'm so happy to work really, really hard, but I'm trying to grow this. I'm really, really trying to grow this. And so will you help me grow? Will you grow this with me? Thank you so much for your support in advance. Really looking forward to, having all the conversations in the comment section below. And I cannot wait to see you again next week.